Okay, good morning. We're going to starting Hilchos Siman Kuf Lamed Dine Chatimas Hayayin, having a seal. Now this is related to Siman Kuf Yud Chet, where we discussed also having a chosam, some kind of a proper seal for transferring foods. It's the same over there, same over here. Yain was also mentioned over there. In general, things that require that are Isuri Daraisa require two chosamos, two separate seals, one over the other. And if it's an issue Darabanan, generally one seal is enough. Okay, so that's a short recap from Kuf Yud Chet. Now, let's start. Seif Aleph. Mutar lahafkid v'lishloach yain biyad goy. So here the case is you're sending your wine, your bottles, your barrels, you're sending them with a goy. And there's no mirtas, there's no yotze v'nichnas. It's in his domain, his property. He's watching it. He's transporting it. So how is it permitted? Right? The issue of yei nesach, of nesach having him do nisuch hayayin, or that's right. The two main issues is that, or we always have to be worried he might switch it with a different non-kosher wine. So those are the two issues we have to be careful for. If you have one seal inside of another, o mafteach v'chosam, or you have one key and a seal, then it's okay because yain is an issue of. Now it's true. Normally, stam yenam or maga yain shalanu. It's true. It's mikar din. It's really a din derabanan, but because it has the potential of being yain nesach, which is an issue de'araisa, so the halacha gives it the status that it needs to have two chasamas, right? Unless we're going to get to it. If it's yain mevushal, then it's something else. But normal wine that has not been cooked, perhaps pasteurized, so then we need two chasamas. Okay. And a key that locks a door, locks a cabinet, so that we're going to see. The Shach mentions it also in Sif Katan Dalid, that a key by itself is not, a lock is not called a chosam. A chosam it's an actual seal on the barrel or on the bottle. However, to have two chosamas, you could have a key and a chosam. We're going to see this again. He just points that out. Okay, so let's read. V'hani mile b'chaviot shocheres. Now, when do we say that a seal on top of the outer cover of the opening of the barrel works just fine? That's if it's a solid barrel. It's made of cheres. Avalo b'chaviot shel eitz, but not barrels that are made of wood. Mipnei sheyacholin lahotzi yain mibein hanesarim, because a wooden barrel, in between every plank of wood that makes up the barrel, it's possible. You can actually you put a little a knife in between, and you're able to get some wine out of there. And it will not be noticed. V'kol shekain, or you prise it apart a little bit, and you won't notice it. V'kol shekain benodot shebekal yacholim motzi yain mibein tefirot. Also, if you have some kind of a canteen that's made of, leather or some kind of a material that it gets stitched together, so it holds in the wine, but you're able to squeeze an opening a little bit where their stitches are. Ve'ein lahem takana, and there's no eitzah, there's no way to get around it, because we're always worried. Again, here we're talking about. So really, this issue is primarily according to when we're dealing with. So again, this goes back to the same machloket of Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. How much are we worried about non-Jews if they are actually doing nisuch hayayin bizman hazer or not? Because if they could be doing nisuch hayayin, or the regular goy according to the Shulchan Aruch, the issue is that he can drink from it. It's not only an issue of him putting wine back in, as long as he can drink from it, and then he can put his mouth and touch the wine, everything inside becomes asr. So then, maga, if it's yeah, you're touching it. It's a hole. Okay, I don't know, but either way, I think it would be considered maga, but there's no actually flow that's being poured out. But anyways, ve'ein lahem takana. Regardless, however you would look at it, it would make all the wine inside iser, even behana. So that's the problem. Elishiyachnis kol hachaviyot shoetz or kol hanod besak. So if there are crevices that you can seep out wine, then having a cover that's sealed doesn't help. The only way you can fix the problem is you put the entire barrel or the entire canteen that has the stitches, she'ein bo tfira mibachutz v'yachtom pi hasak. You put it into a separate bag, and then the whole thing is sealed. A shrink wrap? Okay. Any kind of a seal, all right? Anything that seals it from the outside, and that's fine. The interesting shach, so he points out, it's from the Bach, the Taz also quotes the Bach, that it became the minhag is we never send barrels with even, okay, never send barrels with wood from city to city unless you have a trustworthy Jewish shomer. Doesn't matter if it's nighttime or daytime, because it's very easy for a goy to make a little drill, a tiny little hole, and then seal it, and you'll never know. And ein l'shanos ulahakel klal, and one should not be meko. But then the Shach does point out that in these cases, anytime, like we just said, if you were to take a wooden barrel and then you would put some kind of a tar, some kind of a material to seal it from the outside, then it would be noticeable and you couldn't seep it out. Then it's not a problem anymore. Or your case of a shrink wrap. So that would not be a problem. And then the Shach also says, and according to the psak of the Ramah, who's meko by Christians nowadays, so therefore, generally speaking, all these halachos are, this halacha, this barrel, that we have to be strict, is only a din lechatchila, but b'di'evid, it's not a problem. Because we're not worried about them doing niso chayayin, and therefore, we're less worried. Okay, let's go on. Haga. V'yesh matirin afilu b'chavit shel eitz v'ein chosheshim shema yotzin bein hanasarim. And right, and some are matir, and they're not worried about having to squeeze out between the wooden planks. V'chen noagin, and this is the minhag. U'bilvad shi zeher sheya megufa nistam karaoy. And that's the minhag that it could be meko, but you still have to make sure you have a proper seal on top. We're just, the kula over here is that we're not worried about him squeezing wine out between the planks. V'chein, and so too, shelo yehi sham barza. So you can't have, now also, it was common when you have a barrel, you have a little hole with a little, I don't know the right word for it, but I don't know, spigot or some kind of an opening with a little tiny, I don't know, faucet type of thing, where it's easy to pull wine in and out. Rak yachtoch kol habrazot. So if you have any kind of a faucet or I don't know, some kind of it's easy to get wine in and out. These things were removable. It's like a little cock, like a little cork, like a cork you can stopper. So you just pull them in and out, or you turn them, and then it's easy for wine to come in and out. So therefore, that's not a seal, and that's a major problem. So you have to, in order to transport wine through a non-Jew, and if it has these little I don't know, stoppers, spouts, okay? So then you have to remove them, cut them off, and then do a proper seal. V'yasim or ala mekufa. So then you seal it up, and you put, I don't know, leather over it. V'habrazot kavua b'masmirot. And then you nail it there so it can't come off. V'yichtov otiot chetzian ala or v'chetzian ala brazot. And then you write letters, a word, so that half of it's Half the word is on the leather, half of it's on the wood, or on the whatever is there. She'im yagbia hagoy haor lo yida lachzor lechavein haor kebatchila. So that if a goy actually removes it, he won't be able to put it back the same way it was there. And if you actually found that there was, I guess, a knife in between where wine got dripped out, so then that brings you to the machloket between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah with notzrim bizman hazeh. Okay. Um, okay. So basically, in the Shach reminds us that if you have one b'di'evid, if you have one chosam, so the Ramah paskins that it's good enough on a case of b'di'evid. L'chatchila you have to have two, but b'di'evid one works. Okay. But if you forgot to get rid of the spouts, b'di'evid it doesn't work because that's so easy to remove. It's not even well. The Ramah will allow, because there is a machlokas, if you need two or one, the Ramah will allow one chosam b'di'evid, but there still has to be one chosam. These spouts that are easy to open and close doesn't count, and therefore even b'di'evid, it's no good. Okay, let's go to bet. Seif bet. Im ifkid biyad goy b'chosam echad, asur b'shtia, u'moter b'hanav, hu sheyichad lo keren zavit. So what happens? So the Shulchan Aruch writes, again, well, we're going to see the Rambam in a minute. The Shulchan Aruch writes, you need to have two chotamos. And if you only have one, so then if it's in Jewish property, or it had a set place, and then we're more makel because it's in the same place, and it had a set place to be in the storage room, so then b'di'evet, we say if it only had one chosam, so it's still going to be asur b'shtia, but it is going to be mutter behana. But the Rama writes, Hagav, yesh shekatvu de b'di'evet yesh lahatir. But as we just said, if you only had efila b'chosam echad, if you only had one chosam, then it is okay to even drink. Ve'ein tzarich lahaker chotamol im kin rach shechotamol mekulkal. As aser. Now, you don't have to check to make sure the chosam is intact, but if you see that it was broken, so then it is aser. That you know who generated it. Right, that's okay, you're right. Number one, you don't have to recognize it, you just have to know that the Jewish sender put the chosam there, and you don't have to know what the chosam was, what it looked like, but you see a chosam, so you don't have to worry that maybe the goy switched the chosam on you. Very good. Okay. Gimel. Let's do Gimel. Yeah, here I'll just remind us something we came up earlier, and it's going to come up again in Dalet, but the Shach points it out here in Sif Katan Dalet. He just points out that, again, we're going to see a chavit megufa. If you have a barrel that has its proper cover, that has a seal, some kind of a glue, some kind of cement or seed. So we learned that that could be considered a proper chosam, but it is the Shach points out your regular chavit megufa, your regular standard megufa, it's a machloket if that counts as a regular chosam, because I don't fully understand it, but it's I guess it's more regular and a little bit easier to remove and put back, and therefore he says one should only be makel with a chavit megufa behefsid meruba. That's not lechatchila a chosam. Okay, I don't know how that applies lamaisa, but that's okay. He also says a key. In other words, no, you just have it in a locked cabinet. Right, so we discussed the key, and we'll discuss it again. So, okay. But that's correct. Gimel. Let's go to Gimel. Yain mevushal shalanu, our wine that's cooked. V'chen yayin shelanu she'irvu im devarim acherim. In other words, we mean shelanu means we own it. It's not stam yenam. So it's maga yayin. Because if it's stam yenam and then the goy cooked it, well, it already became aser. It doesn't help you. So our case is you have our wine and then we cook it, or we add dvarim acherim. We add other ingredients, kagon dvash, shemen, v'chen chometz shelanu. Again, it would be you put in honey, you put in oil, you put in something that came from kosher vinegar, and then a goy would no longer do niso chayayin with this item. So then it's mutter lahaf could be a goy b'chosam echad. So then you only need one chosam, right? This is basically what we already mentioned in the beginning. And as the Shach points out, again, here it's in Seif Kat and Zayin, you can see it inside, where the two main issues is Nisa Chayayim and At Mishum Ichufe, you might switch it. So that's from the Gemara.
So if the boy picks up such a thing in front of you in a cup of wine, there's no problem because it's not a chufe.
Well, so it could be an issues of Maga Yain. So I don't want to review the whole thing again now, but it's a machloket. Generally, Shach and Taz, just by transporting, and let's say you have a wine. I'm going to mention it again, maybe tomorrow, but if you're transferring an open bottle of wine, so that's the same issue we had before. You're not worried about Ichufe, but it could be an issue of Maga
I'm
Yain.
saying it's mixed with sugar and honey and things like that.
Right, so then there's no problem. Okay, let's see.
So what about Malaga wine?
Okay, and then the Shach also points out, the case from, he quotes the Beis Yosef, that with Yain Mavushal, so whenever it's an issue of not Nisul Chayayin, and it's only an issue of switching wine, so then if you have a little hole in the barrel, or a little hole in whatever your container is, and wine can come out, but you can't put wine back in, it's not a problem. So that's an interesting chiluk. Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, let's go on. Daled. Keitaru chosam b'toch chosam. Okay, now what's a case of a chosam b'toch chosam? It's a chavit b'kli she'ena mahuda kederech shesotim kol adam v'tach betit hareze chotam echad. So anytime you have a cover that's not super tight and it's relatively easy to get in and out, but then, so that by itself is not a chosam. But then if you add some kind of a cement seal, with teeth or whatever it is, so then it does make it into a chosam because it cannot be easily removed. A chosam, we're going to see a general category of one chosam is it something that's difficult to be mezayef, to forge, or difficult and a big tircha for somebody to remove it and put it back the way it was. And if it's something that it's extremely difficult or kimat impossible to forge, that's a chosam muvhak, and that counts as two chosamos. And if it's something that's relatively easy to remove and put back, so that's not even a chosam at all. So now, Hayak, the Taz just points out, and the seal that you're using on any chosam has to become dry. Because, it's kind of common sense, but as long as it's still wet, it's easy to take it out and put it right back in. And it doesn't show that it's a seal from you. It could have been what someone just recently did. So anyway, Haya kli mehudak v'tach alav milamala harei zechosam b'toch chosam. So now, if you were to put some kind of a strong, some kind of a cork, how to define a cork nowadays? We're going to save not for today, but let's say you were to put a cork inside and then seal it with some kind of a sealer, and then on top of that put another seal that covers it up. That would be a chosam b'toch chosam. So okay. V'chen im tsar pi hanod hareze chosam echad. Now, if you were to take some kind of a canteen, I don't know, leather cloth, and then the case is you tie a kesher, a knot around the top, and it has to be a knot that's difficult to forge. Not impossible, but just difficult.
So
Difficult to.
tsar here means that it's not that it's narrow,
Right.
but that
It has an actual
you
kesher.
tie it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hafach pi hano letocho v'tzar alav harei zechosam b'tochosam. Now, if you were to take this canteen, tie a knot around the top of it, that's a little bit unusual knot, or difficult. It'd be a tircha for a goy to start dealing with it. Again, not impossible, just quite annoying and a little time consuming. And then try and make it look the same. But if you put this inside another bag and then tie another knot around, so it's like two bags, two knots, that's two chasamas. וכן, כל שינוי שמשנה מדברים שאין דרך כאדם, הרי הם כחוסם אחד, והתיכה או הקשירה חוסם שני. So anytime you do something that makes it different, difficult for someone to replace, again, not impossible, just difficult, that's called one chosam. And then if you add on top of it another layer of cement, some kind of sealer, or another type of knot, that would be a second one.
Is that the second one also has to be mishunit?
No.
A little bit?
Well, it can't be something that's easy to open, like any
This is
chosam.
the same level of shinui to go.
So it depends on each case of gufo, but that's okay. Then, just to point out real quick, the Shach points out a case that if you are sending, again, he points out the clarity he describes. It needs to be a kesher that's a little bit difficult. That it's not likely for the non-Jew to go through the trouble to open it up, and because he's afraid of getting caught. So that's the main principle. So he just points out, though, if you're traveling, I don't know, some kind of a bag or a case, and you tie a big, take a bunch of big rope, and you wrap all around it and make a bunch of knots around it. If it's the type of item that the traveler, it's pretty common sense. If the traveler, the transporter, is going to open it up that anyway, something that it's normal for him to go through the tircha to open up. I don't know, because he keeps his lunch in there, or he's making multiple deliveries and he's going to different places. So this outer, the truck itself, that's not going to help. The only way it's counted as a chosam is if it's on your item that it's going to be unusual or difficult. You don't have to worry that he's going to come to 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 do it because he's afraid of getting caught, and it's a tircha. Okay, let's do a couple more short seifim and we'll stop. One more. Hey, shnei ksharim mishunim have kishnei chosamas, and if you have two things that are unusual, it's counted as two chosamas because it's two separate things, and that works. Okay, fine. We'll stop here.